gentleman that always seem to have my back, Mr. Scott Churchson and Mr. O.B. Spencer. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you doing, Scott?
I'm good. How you guys holding up today? Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. No, it's snowing here in Canada. I don't know what's going on in New Jersey, but it's snowing. It's snowing here.
Better there than here. That's all I'm going to say.
Better there than here.
Oh, Obi.
Obi was great. Obi was offended by the snow comment. Yes.
Snow. I don't mind snow. I got a snow blower, and I don't have to commute to work. So snow away, snow away. And when it snows, I get to be the good Samaritan. I'm that guy who takes that snow blower all the way up the block, comes around. I don't do it in this driveway, but I got everybody's.
We got a neighbor up the street who's the same way. Bless you, bless y'all.
You want to take a 10-hour drive and do my driveway?
I said not to. I do sidewalks. It's actually because I have a big snowblower. It's actually easier to walk up and down the full sidewalk than it is to try to turn the thing around. So I'm like, let me do everybody a favor. And when it snows like that, I do that.
Win-win.
Yeah. It looks like I'm being kind. I'm just being selfish, but don't tell nobody.
And listen, again, win-win, ends justify the means. Less work for our shovelers.
Right.
So,
but this show isn't about shoveling, is it?
No, we burned almost 5% of the show already.
So, gentlemen, let's start with the NFL. We still didn't touch on what happened at the end of the day in the wonderful game of the Super Bowl. It was a great game, shocking game at the end. But what did you guys think? I mean, I was hoping that the Bengals would take that one, but I guess Mr. Stafford wasn't in my books helping me out.
Oh,
all right. So this is my first actual pure sports show in a week to get to vent on the Super Bowl. So hopefully we have some time. First, the game itself was. I'm not going to go with it. If the game did not have a good ending, the game would have been a boring game. I'll just say that. But I am hoping McVay retires. I want him to run off into the sunset, get the roses, and we can forget about this guy because I think so little of this man as a coach. It's insane. In 2 Super Bowls, his offensive genius has scored 23 total points. There's that. Okay, it's just a game, 1 game, 2 games, whatever. In 3 playoff runs, he was the number 1 reason his team almost didn't win every single game. He makes this trade for Stafford, who you can argue all this stuff people are arguing about Stafford now that he has 1 Super Bowl victory. McVay constantly takes the ball out of his hands. He did it against Tampa Bay at the end of the first half, resulted in a fumble. Early in the second half, resulted in another fumble. Finally, he's forced to put it in the man's hands. He makes 2 beautiful passes to Cooper Kupp, and they win. So doesn't learn his lesson. Now he gets to the Super Bowl. Look, I don't know whether Chris Collinsworth is being told to sound like an idiot. The game of football has changed since he's played, or he's an idiot. You do not have to run successfully to make the play action pass a useful tool. Linebackers are making reads. And if you play action well, they're going to react to it to make those reads. And when a defense is stopping your run game, it means they're making those reads very well. They're reacting. So it's okay to go to play action when the run game isn't working. And the run game wasn't working. Play action was there all day on first down in the second half. He did not do it. Look, I like to run the ball. I'm a fan of wanting to see Tennessee win the Super Bowl with a stud running back. Running game wasn't there. Play action was there all day. When does he finally decide to put the game in Stafford's hands? At the very end, when he had to. And what did Stafford do? Now that OBJ was out of the game, Higbee wasn't there. All he had was Kupp and some guys who we've never heard of, and a running back, Henderson, who was able to catch out of the backfield. He puts the team on his shoulder and wins. Stafford deserves his roses. And even though I was probably with Cup for the MVP until the last 2 plays of the game, when all of a sudden it changed, which is a whole nother argument, which I'm not going to go down about the MVP voting. Stafford was amazing, and McVay did everything he can to stop him. And I didn't even mention the 2 red flags against the 49ers. So my big takeaway is Stafford is a good quarterback. No, he has not been one of the 3 to 5 best quarterbacks of his generation. Will probably get into Hall of Fame, but that is because, as Sherman said, the bar is lowered, especially for quarterbacks, in a Super Bowl victory. A couple 5,000-yard counting seasons make him a Hall of Famer, so he's probably getting in. But McVay should retire before he's exposed, because the 49ers were one good pass anywhere, one good play away from beating them, and going to the Super Bowl again with Jimmy G at quarterback.
All right.
Woosah.
Yes.
Woosah.
Yes.
Boy, I told you it was going to be a lot.
Close your eyes, meditate, count to 10 as necessary. Here's my take on this. I think you hate on McVay a little more than I probably would. Also understanding the fact that he is still kind of a young head coach. So
he's a kid.
He is, especially by our age. My God. It's a great sign you feel old. It's basically when the head coaches are a dozen years younger than you are. But the one thing I'll say about this game is that this game ended up being closer than it needed to be. This is a game that, if you look at it, I mean, you had a bad touchdown, no face mask call, right there, followed by an immediate interception by Stafford, which turned into 10 quick points. Take those out of there, this is suddenly a closer game. Or this isn't as close a game. Odell Beckham being injured, I think, had a huge factor. It forced Kupp to, and it worked out for Kupp because he got the MVP, and I understand your agitation with not being Aaron Donald, but leaving that out for a second, it ended up being a better second half than first half, but it didn't end up being something that should have been as close as it was. I think the second half is when the wheels kind of came off a little bit for the Bengals when it came to the offensive line, because of the fact that Aaron Donald and that defense just started to get to him and he couldn't make anything happen. Like I said, a big touchdown came about from a no-call penalty that should have overturned, honestly, a great touchdown pass. And it's been, if you ever look at, for the most part, the Bengals' wins during the playoff run, they've been wins, but they haven't really been crisp, pretty wins. I mean, you look at what happened with Tennessee. Tannehill threw 3 interceptions. They found a way to win despite, I think, 8 or 9 sacks. The game against Kansas City, they got the comeback, sure, but bad play calling at the end of the second half changed what could have been easy points and an impossible lead into sudden hope, which, to their credit, they overcame. But none of their wins have been like really strong, crisp wins. They've been, all right, they won. You take the win, you run with it. But having said that, though, for Houday Nation and Bengal Nation, you have a lot to be excited about. If I put these two teams side by side and I say predict for me which team will basically have more Super Bowl appearances in the next 5 years, I will go with the Bengals over the Rams on this one, because of the fact that I see the growth and the trajectory upward on a young team that got a ton of experience this year. They didn't come away with it. That's going to hurt hard. But in some ways, that's a good hurt because it makes you hungrier and makes you smarter next year. I like I think they've got a good future ahead of them. It's going to be a more challenging division, I think, next year than it could be this year. Their schedule is expected to be a little bit harder too, just because of the alignment of where they're placed. But I like what their future is going to hold over there, and I like the fact that Javon Chase and Joe Burrow are so tight that I believe now they're literally next door neighbors, or live on the same block, because Jamar Chase was like, give me an offer on your house because I want to hang out with him. I mean, that kind of dynamic there is something that you want to see from these two guys going forward, especially as young as they are. And it was pain on their side to come that close and lose, but it's a good pain long-term. Like I said, sometimes a loss can be a long-term win depending on how it's taken. And I think for them, it can be. I think for LA, the cards were right and things were played properly. I think next year is going to be a different year for them. I don't see them necessarily having the same level of success next year, but kudos to them this year. They got it done. And something to be proud of and something for Stafford to be able to hold, hang on to forever.
So I'm going to take a couple of things here. Since you followed up on my AD versus Cup thing, I'm going to just in general go, I think the MVP of a Super Bowl 50% of the time at least is dumb, if not more. One game, because I can make a legitimate argument for Cup, which I know at the moment that touchdown was scored, you and I were talking, Scott, and we were both all over Cup. And fans have already probably voted at that point. Then, of course, AD makes 2 great plays. So not to mention what Stafford did with only having, he found Cup every time Cup got open. He made throws to Jefferson when Cup, whatever. In the Super Bowl, it's even a season, I'm not the biggest fan of the MVP, but in a single game, that's really my bigger issue. I have an interesting question that will never be answered about the second half, the defensive line play. At the end of the first half, on that last drive, is when they shifted to overloading one side was 3 guys and going 3-on-1. What I don't know is if this team, the coaching staff, had a lot of cojones and said, we know that the Cincinnati Bengals make great second half adjustments. We see that this 3-1 is going to work, but we're not going to install it till the second half. And we're just going to have confidence that 4 guys straight ahead will work in the first half enough to keep them in check. Either they discovered it live at the end of the first half and then went with it, and we can call it basically a second half adjustment, or it was planned and they just waited. And then at the end of the first half, they said, we make sure we stop them on this drive. But that defensive adjustment, whenever it came to mind, was huge for the game and the biggest factor in fully shutting down that offense. Because in my mind, Burrow was expecting a short clock. So the offense was designed to give him a short clock, and they were just doing these drop-off passes, and the defensive linebackers and backs were in position to stop those drop downs from being big plays, which they got against Kansas City. Or, like I said, that was never the game. There was always going to be 4, and they just finally figured out the alignment to break that porous offensive line. And then the last thing you said is, tell me which team is more likely. Look, I don't think that you can say any team in the AFC is more likely to make it to the Super Bowl and win it more often than the Rams, because I don't see a team in the NFC that is really competitive. I mean, honestly, it's like, try to convince me that the Cowboys don't have the second best quarterback in that division right now. And I know I'm a Dak stan, but I don't put him in that top layer. So you got Dak and you got Stafford, and of course you have Rodgers. Apologies to Rodgers, but the talk is Rodgers going in over there anyway. So now you're going to have Rodgers, you're going to have Mahomes, you're going to have Allen, you're going to have Burrow, you're going to have Herbert, and holy crap, who knows what's going to happen in Jacksonville? And by the way, if Watson returns, he may still be over there also. I know, I always talk. There's 3 to 5 quarterbacks every year who guarantee you a shot at the playoffs. Right now, one is Mahomes, one is Rodgers, and whoever the 3rd, 4th, and 5th guys are all in the AFC right now. Whether it's going to be Herbert, whether it's going to be Allen, whether it's going to be Burrow, whether it's going to be Jackson, because of that and the traditional Super Bowl hangover. And now we've gone from 2 strength of schedule games to 3 strength of schedule games, which over a 17 course season. I know you're crazy with arithmetic, so you may think it's like an extra 5% of your games are now strength of schedule games. That's a lot. It's going to be harder for Cincinnati to repeat, especially if somehow the Steelers get an adequate quarterback, just because of the competition level. And I love Burrow. I think Burrow is right on the edge of cocky and and swagger, like whatever that line is. He's right where you're supposed to be. As you and I have discussed many times, Scott, the less commercials you see him do and the less he does in those commercials, the more fearful of him you should be. Because right now we know there are people are lining up to put him in commercials. So, I mean, I have great respect for Cincinnati. They have a young team, young core, can go buy an offensive line this offseason. But boy, that AFC is going to be quarterback crazy.
It will be, and I think in this case, like I said, I think the draw that they've got, to be able to start bringing people in, that's going to be a big sell to them because they've been the Bungles for a long time, and a lot of players in the NFL are seeing what that team is, and they know where their weak spots are. Will it be next year that they get back? No, but 3, 4, 5 years, I think they can get back. Yes, I think you got to give a little bit of time for Burrow and Chase to grow. I think you got to give time for them to adjust to whatever adjustments are thrown at them. But again, I stand by my belief on that one, that I think there's a bright future ahead for them. And yeah, I will stand by my belief that they will reach more Super Bowls in the next 5 years than the Rams will. It's a gutsy move. I'm not going to argue that it's a gutsy prediction or not, but
any prediction like that is gutsy. Like pick two teams in the NFL and say this was going to reach more. Even picking
Giants and Jets.
You don't know what's going to happen. It's football, and so yeah. But yes, that would be less guts, but still, just okay. Oh, and interesting note. Sorry, I was going to say. I do wonder, I do wonder if one of the LSU receivers, LBJ or Landry, will find their way over to Cincinnati, because of how big that Burrow championship was. So it does look like Landry is a free agent after the 2022 season. So just something that, in terms of this is a team people want to go play for.
Would that also be a little bit of a dig towards Cleveland?
I don't know if Landry's angry at Cleveland, but it would certainly feel like a dig towards Cleveland. From a Landry perspective, definitely from an OBJ perspective. Like, I'll go to another small city in the same town, but not Mayfield, Burrow. For OBJ, it will be perceived a lot different than if it's Jarvis Landry. It's just like, I'm a free agent. Let me go play with the LSU quarterback.
Fair.
So the other thing that was interesting, yes, it was very, I think it created a great impact, as we talked in the previous show about the Super Bowl, when we did the preview to the Super Bowl, was that halftime show. It was star-studded, struck, but as much of an impact it made with the audience that was watching the game, did it have a real feeling or an impact in what's to come for an NFL younger audience? What do you guys think?
Oh, I agree 100%. This one, Obi and I disagree, I think, pretty strongly on this one. But this was catered to attempt to hit a new demographic. And as a result, their ratings were not on par for the 18 to 49 market as they were in 2020. But it was a darn sight better than it was last year. And I think what they were doing is they were testing the waters to see how the audience responded. And it responded very positively, especially in the younger market. What I think is going to happen is this was basically a 2-year, 3-year test. I think in this case ends up happening going forward. The future could actually involve, I was going to say Doja Cat, Ed Sheeran, Lil Nas. I was going to say Silk Sonic. There's Bieber even. There's a lot of people that I think that are more geared towards the young group. In this case, this was a 90s approach, but with more of an R&B rap style that allowed, again, which is what the younger kids connect to. Yes, it's oldies, I guess you can say it in this case, but it worked for them. And the numbers showed that. So I think in this case, they can start gradually getting younger and younger with future Super Bowl halftime shows until they eventually just phase out the old farts that, like ourselves, that have no interest in this and ultimately have no idea who any of these people are. I think this is part of a long-term game plan. And so far, I think it's worked for them.
So I'll talk about this itself. because I'm not sure what the demographic decision. Like, I do know that Scott is right in terms of the goal is obviously to get the 18 to 35-year-old crowd in, because that's who you want to have in, and because that's a bigger generation, by the way, than my generation, because the baby boom, but everybody knows whatever. So obviously that is a goal. I just don't know if this is a new twist on how they're going to do it. If it's just because this is the people that Jay-Z happens to know and can get to do the show when there is backlash from various groups towards the NFL, and it's been hard to get certain styles of acts to do the show because they don't want to, because how they may feel about the NFL, and these guys were willing because they are so close to Jay-Z. But my biggest thing about the show was, I know a lot of people loved it. I would have preferred half the acts. I don't even care which half it was. One of the greatest shows like this I ever saw was a Justin Timberlake Grammy performance, where he just did a medley of and you're just like, oh my goodness, and oh my goodness. Like, I did not realize Justin Timberlake's collection was that big. And I know Scott's all about going, oh wait, this, and I would have loved to seen that from an Eminem, or really from a Snoop or Dr. Dre. I would have liked to see them collaborate more, even if it meant them singing songs that they weren't their own thing. I did happen to like the 50 Cent piece. That worked for me, like a surprise act, one song, moving on. So I was not as instantly after the show, I was more excited, but then after I started thinking about it, I was like, it's not gonna be memorable to me, I think. At the halftime show, there was no moment of like when Bruce in his 80-year-old body slides into the camera with his groin. You're just like, Bruce, what are you like? That I'm going to remember. The 50 Cent Upside Down is what I'm going to remember, I know, in 4 or 5 years. Just like Prince playing Purple Rain in the Rain is what I remember. Yeah. The one thing I agree with you, Scott, is they have now opened the door for true hip hop. They're going to keep staying with folks who have larger and older and established brands, if you will, because those guys have the most music to put out there. They can put 15 minutes. By being older and around more, you have the people who grew up with them and the people who now follow them as they classic rock or oldie, whatever that category is, from a rap R&B perspective. So I do think the rap door has been fully open. We've had more R&B with Bruno Mars and Beyonce and pop from Swift lately, younger faith bands. But I think this really opened up the door for R&B. And what I think it really did, I mean, this was a door I think that was kind of accidentally shut by the Black Keys, because their show sucked. And I was a huge Black Eyed Peas fan. And they had sound problems and timing. It wasn't a good show. And so I think this kind of made up for it. And it did tap into a market, because now Jay-Z's like, look, guys, you could do it. I think the political aspect of it is actually being played up by the people who want to play that up. And on purpose to attract a particular audience as well. So yeah, a lot there that I'm done talking on.
My thinking is on this. Just going to add one thing to this. I think the era of 1 to 2 artists is going to be gone, because here's the thing. You mentioned Justin Timberlake. I'm going to jump on that. Suppose you're not a Justin Timberlake fan. Are you going to be more inclined or less inclined to watch the halftime show? Suppose you got 5 artists like you did last week, and of those you only like Snoop. You'll tune in for Snoop and bear out the other 4. So they're hitting multiple different targets here. And as a result, they're not getting as many songs, but they're still getting the presence. And okay, you may not know, you may not be big on Mary J. Blige, you may not even be big on 50 Cent, but you're there for X person. You're there for Eminem to see what he's going to do. Taking a knee, I think that was pre-planned from the beginning between him and Goodell. I really do. I think Goodell was like, basically, don't do it. And then, of course, he's going to do it anyway. That whole crap was pre-planned in my mind, 100%. But for that, I mean, like I said, in this case, they're going to try and expand this and bring in, hell, I would say even 8 artists, possibly in the next 3 to 5 years, because that's the way that the kid generation, and I'm sitting there yelling at a cloud right now, to quote Simpsons for a sec, that's the way they are now. It's about being hit with multiple things quickly. You know, it's not 1 to 2, it's being peppered. You know, if Space Jam 2 taught us anything, it's the fact that kids like to be peppered with a bunch of different things. And that's where they're going to start pushing this.
I would disagree with that when it comes to music. I mean, if you were to take a look at the top, like there's that infographic that shows the top selling artists over and over and over and over and who it is each year, each quarter of each year. And then all of a sudden towards the end, not all of a sudden, eventually towards the end, Drake gets up there and just holds. I mean, just holds. And so that is actually the 18 to 35-year-old crowd is Drake. I don't know nothing about Drake other than that he's a Raptor.
He's better looking than I am, I'll tell you that. That's all I can
The biggest thing I know about Drake is he's a Raptor fan. He's Canadian. He's half African-American, half Jew. That's what his music, not at all. So I'm not sure that that's it. But the other thing, talking to some younger people, 20-year-olds, that I think might actually be on the horizon. And as soon as I say it, I think you're going to connect with it. And there might be some pushback from the NFL because they may not want it. But you know the music that these younger kids listen to now? A lot of them is their video game music. Like literally the music, the scores from their video games is what they play on their iPods and their iPads. And when they're at a party, it's not singing and dancing. It's like Zelda. But other games have much more music. I'm not a big video game person. I'm going to say a game I know everybody kind of has reference to. Pokemon. Like I remember when my kid was like 12, his birthday gift was an orchestra Pokemon show where they played clips from every Pokemon, and then they did other videos. Right? So I'm not sure that the next thing won't be that. Now the NFL might be afraid because we do know that esports might be what catches them, but that's going to bring that audience in musically.
So guys, I am
down for that in a heartbeat. 100%. Anybody who listens to metal cover of video games, I would so 100% be down for that. But we'll have to see.
Yeah.
So I am going to switch the topic a little bit because I want to get back into this topic when we touch the NBA. Because what happened last night in that show started, it was beyond real, and Obi touched on something that was keen to that demographic. But let's go back to the sports world, the entertainment world. We can discuss after, as I said, after when we touch the NBA. And now let's switch to the sour notes of the MLB. Because there won't be any stars going to watch any games this out there, the way the things are going. And we know that there is a CBA being discussed right now in the MLB. We know that they are as far apart as they were when they started now, because the owners just don't want to give in. The MLBPA has made multiple proposals, and the owners are rejecting them based on, we don't want to give more money to anything. And I think, and just to give you a little bit of a note on this morning at 7 o'clock in the morning, I got woken up by a call from a friend of mine in the Dominican Republic asking me if he should cross the line because the owners are now recruiting young ball players in the Dominican Republic to start the league again.
As scabs again, like they did in '95.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
I don't know how the owners can do that during a lockout. That's interesting, but okay, because it's not a strike. It's a lockout. They're not letting guys who have contracts play. I thought that if they had, if you have a game, you have to pay the guys who you have contracts for. I don't know how
they're not getting ticket sales and revenue that way.
It's not a strike, it's a lockout. So I don't know. Now the owners may have a plan. I don't know how that all legally works here in the U.S. I have a contract that you're putting the game on, whether you play me or not. My contract says I'm supposed to be paid. You chose not to let me play. That's a different argument. But in terms of the lockout strike, first thing I want to say is always I don't like the argument that people put forth. I don't want to see millionaires arguing with billionaires. I don't want to see thousandaires arguing with millionaires. Mm-hmm. That's the difference in the money. I think it's easier for people to understand. And if I'm making some $1,000 a year and you're making some $1 million a year, I can see the difference of me working for you not being very okay. Number one. Number two, the guys who this fight is mostly for, of course, those guys who don't ever make $1 million total because they're up and down, up and down, up and down, especially right now, the way they're handling their prospectively good rookies. These guys are up and down, up and down, up and down. We've talked hundreds of times about how horrible the minor leagues are. Mm-hmm. Like, I would rather take, Kyler Murray all of a sudden is now having problems. Kyler Murray may be out of the league in 4 years because he gets labeled a problem child, and he still made the right decision risking CTE to get a 4-year rookie quarterback contract financially. Baker Mayfield may get knocked out of the NFL because he doesn't work out, and there was no other, over baseball, he made the right move. So baseball has a real problem with its future in generating good athletes to come to it. And I think the owners know that. And I think usually when we see these strikes, both sides are looking short term, mm-hmm. and that makes it the fight. I just feel like the owners have to be looking and going, we are getting strangled by other sports and other forms of entertainment. We need a system that's going to allow us to survive long term. This is an asset I want to give to my children or sell for a lot of money to somebody else and want them to come in. I think it makes the owners much more vicious than I want my $3 billion this year when the owner is thinking long term. And the players, because their careers are so short, this isn't like even Scott, who's an actor, is going to do this forever. Or a guy who's working in a coal mine who may hate his job and it might kill him, but it's going to be his career. These are guys who have 10, 15 years if they're the best players, 1 or 2 shots if they're lucky, but they're in the union now. I don't see this resolving soon because baseball is struggling so much. It's got to come out of here with a good product that it can sell to people, and it knows that it has to come out with that. And they're risking already. They've already started canceling games. So I feel like the owners are in for the long haul because they want to revamp their product in a way that works for them so they can sell it.
Also keeping in mind that the owners a lot of times have money outside of baseball, lots of it too, in whatever business that they've got, in whatever industry they've got. And almost in some ways, in some cases, baseball is a side hustle. It's not like the predominant income source that they've got. So they can play the long game knowing full well that they're not hurting themselves or their generation, because of the fact that they are so heavily involved in insert other companies here. From a baseball standpoint, Garrett Cole got ostracized hardcore because he talked about the strike being used to protect, quote, the integrity of the game. And he got crushed because at making $1/3 of $1 billion under that Yankee contract, it's like the integrity of the game. Yeah. What about basically what the fans are waiting for as they're going to inevitably start raising prices for, Joe Q, who doesn't really basically go to a lot of games and suddenly has to drop $200 to $300, just to go to a baseball game with 2 or 3 kids. That's where a lot of fans are getting pissed off because it's like you said, millionaires, hardcore millionaires versus hardcore billionaires. And both of them, like you said, are focusing short term. Our win, our decide, basically we need to win for our side. But no one in pretty much any war thinks beyond what it does to the terrain after the war is over. And this is where it is. It's about our side beating their side. And then, that's the be all and end all, regardless of what it does to everything long term. Baseball. Go ahead.
Sorry. I'll go back to what you're saying, Scott, because one of the things that though is going to affect this lockout, and I think the owners are going to start realizing, is that Disney is not going to stand by. Hey guys, go as long as you want. And the Fox contract that we got when we bought Fox Sports, which is for 25 years, is now in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they are not going to wait. I mean, they Disney wants to make money,
Yeah.
and if they don't put games on TV, they are not going to be making that money.
The players I think that are involved in the strike right now are protecting themselves immediately. But baseball is on the decline. Esports is poised to take over in the next couple of years as far as revenue goes and ratings go. You know, basketball, soccer, a lot of the other sports are taking over baseball because baseball is slow paced. And I'm curious to see what ends up happening here because we've been through strikes before, all three of us. You know, we've seen what it does to the landscape there. And I think if this goes on for, like, say, an entire year and locks out all of baseball, I would almost suspect that they're going to start making some massive rule changes to try and bring people back. Some of the really obscure left field ones that I have jokingly talked about may be seriously discussed because they need to try and reinvigorate, you know, people's interest in a sport that they have not watched for a year because, frankly, it pissed them off.
It's really sad. Like, I mean, you know, and I always, as a former player, and you know, it's sad to see that they are destroying the game for for just a lucrative amount of money. You know what I mean? It's the previous, and I am not saying that the previous owners were better than the current ones, but at least in the olden days, they understood that there was a game and that their fans had to be respected. And now it's just a matter of the buck. You know, that's one thing. And now the other issue is that has rose from all this is the employment contracts of all these players that are supposed to be coming to the U.S. from Latin America, from Mexico, from Australia, from Colombia, you name it, is in jeopardy because they haven't done any work on those documentations. So how many players are they going to be able to get if the season is shortened?
Well, it was interesting because when you mentioned the fact that you got a phone call and that they may be exploring replacement players, I pulled up the list, and some of the replacement player names that I know you're going to recognize: Benny Agbayani, if you remember him, Kevin Millar, Brian Daubach, Kerry Lightenberg, Corey Lytle. You know, there's names in here, Shane Spencer, that were all replacement players. So it's for them. I mean, by God, you run with it because it's a massive, massive opportunity. I don't know how that would necessarily work with like the Atlantic League, with like the Frontier League and all the rest of those independent leagues out there. But, you know, for them, by God, it's a huge opportunity. They got to be salivating over this.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, the Mexican League that normally their players don't even get seen.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's a great way.
Sure.
Colombia is producing a lot of players now that, you know, that are not recognized, but they are great players.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's interesting, but so far the discussion is that they delayed until March 5th, spring training. I don't think March 5th is. I think March 5th is too close by. I don't think they can resolve their issues. I see the MLB starting officially probably mid-May.
That's what I'm thinking.
Mid-May, beginning of June. So that puts them into a season that will end what?
They'll probably end in the same amount of time. Probably October.
2 month season, 3 months maximum.
It's going to be hard to change the dates of the playoffs / World Series with every other sport and everything up to date. It was a lot easier when everything was stopped because of COVID, but the NFL is in place. I don't want to have to compete against the NFL any more than I need to. I don't want your playoffs into the season. Like, that's where things get tough. Is baseball negotiating with the TV networks is struggling. I believe, Scott, right? Scott has pointed out many times that Major League Baseball games do not stack up against the playoff games. Do not stack up against a Monday night football game, a Sunday evening football game, a Thursday evening football
regular
game.
Season, by the way.
Yeah.
World
So
Series versus regular season football.
You have trouble when you go to Fox and go, well, we want no. We're trying to maximize these playoffs because this is when we're going to sell for the highest number. Our ad dollars, and our ad dollars are already going to be down because you're late. So I think whatever it is, if you're going to miss games, that's what it's going to be. You're going to shorten the season, and your playoffs are going to stay where your playoffs are, unless you negotiate for a new playoff structure.
To add to something too about this, and we're really only focusing right now on the Western Hemisphere. In Europe, where actually there are American football and American baseball leagues, it's hurting the product there as well on the Eastern international front, because of the fact that the Major League Baseball is the be-all and end-all location for baseball. If Major League Baseball is not getting anything done, then the smaller independent leagues that exist in Europe, that exist in Asia, exist in Australia, they're going to be hurt as well, because your parent product is basically is disappeared right now. So European baseball, while it is a thing, surprisingly enough, is going to no doubt be hurt by this because of the fact that there's nothing going on. There's no parent there.
It gets helped because some guy who is at the bottom of the bracket, because somebody who's basically a free agent or just would have been called up this year is like, I want to play and I don't want to play in the minor leagues. Forget it. I'll sign a 2-year European contract. I'll sign a 2-year Japanese contract. I'll sign a 1-year Japanese contract, and then he doesn't come back this year and decides he likes Japan, because he knows he gets a 10-year deal in Japan and happens to be okay with the language, meets a whatever. So a Japanese league can threaten, just like the European leagues have been threatening and taking away from college basketball. And then there's the other league that is salivating, which I know Scott loves to talk about. MLS is looking at this going, please, thank you, air us. We're here to be aired, Fox. You want to put us on the prime stations? Whoever has our put us out there. You're not competing against baseball. And we know that FIFA is one of the number one selling games for the 18. Like, kids love the FIFA soccer.
That's
what I
want to touch on. Exactly what you are saying, Obi. And I hate to cut you. Baseball has to realize right now that November is coming. And November is World Cup. All the preparation games towards the World Cup, it's going to affect what TV stations are going to do, because they are going to air a US UK game or a US Spain in preparation for that World Cup, because those are the friendlies, especially in September, October, that are going to be stunned before the World Cup starts in November.
That's why I'm thinking Major League Baseball is going to try and end the season the same time that they normally do every year. And kind of put the strike in the rearview mirror, sort of a setup, because the later it goes, the more you're reminded of why it's later. But in this case, let's break this down. What they're going to be going up against? They're going up against the NFL, NBA, NHL, FIFA, and soccer in general. To say nothing of some of the international sports, cricket, rugby, etc. In this case here, there's so much competition. And again, you have fans that are agitated over the fact that this strike even happened in the first place. What happened a couple of years ago with COVID, that was different. It was a 60-game season, but we all understood why. And I think everybody was just happy to have it. They blew that window. They blew that chance that they had right there with that short season, with the COVID season. And now they're going to be looking at this as an 80, 90 game season and be like, you guys did this to yourselves. Baseball, the average age of a viewer is 57 years old. Soccer, I believe, is 42. So soccer can hit the younger market largely because the action is never ending. It never breaks for commercials, and when they have ads, they're kind of on the side or, just down below. So it keeps moving. It continues to go. That's the strength of esports. There's no real break in the action for the most part. Baseball, because there's so much break in a world that is focused faster and faster, is hurting itself and is destroying its product because of the fact that they're just so focused on what they're trying to fix now instead of the long term. And again, like you mentioned, compounding the problem for later.
I mean, and all of this, and I hate to say it, but is the commissioner's office. The commissioner's office hasn't done their job at all. I mean, and I thought he was leaving. And I don't know what happened to his decision that he was leaving the office.
Now, let me ask you guys a question. We're going to flip this around a little bit. Bud Selig is in the Baseball Hall of Fame. If this strike goes on for, God help me, say a year, does Rob Manfred, does he end up in the Baseball Hall of Fame despite everything that went down during his run?
I wouldn't put him in.
But will he get in? Not whether you will.
He will get in. He will get in because he's he's the guy that ran the league, and no matter what, the press doesn't want to go against MLB.
Mm-hmm. You'll lose the perks if you stand against them.
The Hall of Fame is a completely useless and meaningless museum. Is the all-time leading hit getter, strikeout getter, and or home run hitter in there? No. So it's the Hall of really good. It's not the Hall of Fame, but that's a whole nother subject. Yeah. And the way to save the game,
Olerud.
And of course, the way to save the game after it comes back is to give the players steroids. So I don't know what your solution is.
Yes. So, listen, I mean, I'll be honest with you. People tune in for long home runs. Why is Aaron Judge popular? It is not basically his stature. It's the fact that he can launch the ball 450 yards at 123 miles an hour. Same with Giancarlo Stanton. Although Stanton's a good-looking dude, let's not argue that. But in this case, people want the bombs. That's why they tuned in to McGwire and Sosa 20-some years ago. It brought baseball back. Steroids brought baseball back. And that's where I almost talked about. They have to do these weird, bizarre rules to entice people back in because the same product is now being pushed on an audience that doesn't want it and is angry with you. You've got to make it interesting.
So, guys, we have 5 minutes left, and we do have to touch
never did NBA or
the event in Cleveland because if not, the Hall of Fame, the Music Hall of Fame will kill me. And let's start with the competitions that went on last night because they were really interesting and fun to watch for the first time in a long time.
You talking NBA or Olympics?
NBA.
Okay.
The skills competition last night changed its format. This year there were 3 teams of 3 people. The first team were the rookies, which let me just give you an idea of the people that were involved. The rookies were Scotty Barnes, Kate Cunningham, and Josh Gridley, Oklahoma. Those are the rookies. The second team were the 3 at the combo. Dionis, Alex, and Giannis at the combo. And the third team were 3 Cleveland players in Jared Allen, Darius Gerald, and Evan Mobley. They started with a shooting competition in which the team Cavaliers won with 44 points scored. I mean, Darius Gerald just took that by himself. And it was unreal. The second competition was the passing competition, and that was won by the team the rookie team. But you know, it's interesting that the way then they had the 3-point competition, which I thought it was also good. Where I didn't really like for the first time in a long time, I have to say, it was the dunk competition. They lowered it to only 4 players,
Mm-hmm.
and they took players that, to me, had no name in the NBA.
Well,
Really.
Obi Toppin had some name.
But, considering that it was the 75th year of the NBA and that's what they were celebrating, they didn't give that type of show. Obi.
Yeah. So look, I didn't watch it at all. Didn't wasn't interested. I don't think the slam dunk contest has been relevant since Griffin jumped over a car to win as a rookie. It's just not interesting to me. I'm not an all-star game person. I don't watch any of them. I do prefer skills competitions over an actual game because I think the risk of injury is low, so the urge to be competitive is high. I just think that these guys do try harder in these skill competitions because it's a chance to show off, but it's not a chance to really, get smacked or hit or whatever. There's no defense, so they're usually fun. It's funny. I made a choice not to watch it because I guessed over last night, and I wanted to be able to have something that they enjoyed on TV as well because I did put it on. Now, in terms of slam dunk contest, I'm with Scott here. Maybe it's because he has the same name as me, but I wanted to see Obi Toppin do some dunks just because, yes, I heard of him. But we haven't had, again, since Griffin, we haven't had a major exciting name in the slam dunk contest unless you're a real basketball insider, to use our term, who really loves the game and knows every player, who the good dunkers are, who aren't the great players. So the great players and the great dunkers don't line up anymore. Thank you, Steph Curry. But I wasn't as excited, so I didn't watch it, and I don't know what their draw is going to be. I do know I talked to somebody. My favorite part may be the draft because we get to see 2 superstars dealing with another 10, 15 superstars, and it's a little real at that moment. Like, let's screw over James Harden. Why? Let's make him feel like because we're angry at him both. It doesn't matter. Make Harden the last pick. That will show him. I mean, to the point where nobody likes James Harden because now even Draymond Green's like, Sixers lost the trade. Sixers got rid of a guy who wasn't playing before them for an all-star. Like, how do you lose? Like, the bottom line is they got a player on the court in the end. So, the all-star games are fun to talk about probably if you watch them, but I don't got the energy for them anymore.
Well, with that, guys, we have come to an end of the show. Surprisingly enough, we talked 55 minutes. Incredible.
Time flies, man. I got to tell you.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Exactly.
Sports. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we will say goodbye for another week. Every week until the NFL returns, we will be doing the Sports Insider from now on. And we'll bring everything. We'll touch on the NFL. We'll touch on all sports in general. And I think that just keep going. And just to let you know, this show can be heard as well on the Spanglish World Radio Network across its social media platforms. As well, remember to go to our website, SpanglishSportsWorld.com, for all the news and programming. And remember, the Sports Insider. Watch it, hear it, download it, but especially leave it, because the Sports Insiders is sport, and sport is the Sports Insiders. Until next week, in the name of Mr. Scott Churchson and Mr. Obi Spencers, this has been Eduardo Harari, and we'll see you next week at 11 a.m.